I've been working at the Atwater Library for over 10 years, but actually started as a volunteer at the circulation desk. I had been home. I was unemployed at the time, and I had been home during the day watching the midday news, and there was a community events announcement when it used to be CFCF 12. And there was a little community announcement that popped up, just text saying that Atwater Library and Computer Center was looking for volunteers, and it gave the address. I've lived in the southwest of Montreal for over 30 years. Pretty familiar, especially with this kind of general neighborhood. I remember looking at the address and being like, no, there's no library there. What's happening? So at the time I had a beagle. I immediately got up off the couch. I also love libraries and I love books. So immediately hooked his leash, walked into the building. I can't remember the volunteer who was here, but I remember being like, it is a library. It does exist. From there, just got to chit-chatting with the volunteer. Was like, well, what do you do? Are you an employee? Found out they volunteer. Was like, okay, I will volunteer. So signed up to be a circulation desk volunteer once a week for a couple of hours. And then it kind of went from there as a volunteer who was not asking as many computer-related questions because everything was still digital, taking in and putting back the books. I was not asking as many questions as the other volunteers. So when a position opened up for the computer courses that they teach, they knew I was out of work, and they said, well, hey, this might be a good fit. So I tried it. I fell in love and have been facilitating as much as possible digital literacy courses. Last fall, I got offered the position I currently have, which is coordinating one of their projects, the Connect project. It really depends on my mood, I think. So I know, because I feel like I was looking at my own personal book collection, which is a little small, but it's a little all over the place. I'm like, I don't see much of a common theme. And especially during the last year or so, I've not read too many new physical books. I've really gotten into but even especially audiobooks. Just the idea, resting my eyes, not having to like read the page or turn the page. The idea that I could be washing the dishes while still enjoying a book is super, super appealing to me. But in general, definitely some kind of fantasy fiction, sci-fi. And generally, I realized too, in the thread of books I was looking at to talk to you about, I realized there is definitely, if there's a message in the story. So I tend towards a fictional story, but with some sort of real life critical thinking or application, if that makes any kind of sense. So I'm definitely interested in like big stories kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely fiction if we wanted to be that sort of vague, but anything that's a little more adventure or fantasy kind of also I really like. Yeah. And biographies. I've been really big into biographies too. Is Jonathan Livingston Siegel. It came, first of all, as a recommendation from a dear friend of mine when we were a lot younger. And it sort of stemmed from a conversation where we had perhaps surrounding the themes of the book. About this sort of adventurism. And, I remember being younger and sort of sitting around and talking with this friend about, what are we going to do? And a lot of pressure to sort of have decisions already made and know kind of what the future would be like. And this friend and I were both like, well, we don't know. We're surrounded by friends who are going to be doctors and lawyers and this and that. And there's years of a strategic plan that they have. And we're just sort of like, I don't know. I guess I'm growing up. I guess I'll be something, but I don't know what that is. And that friend was like, I just finished this really short book. You should really read it. It's really good. And they didn't give me too much information about it. They just sort of said, it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about, but you read it and you talk to me about it. You tell me what you like. And so I read it in, what felt like maybe an hour, probably a little longer. And then I reread it, and I probably reread it like 3 times in a row. I consider myself a slow reader. And by that, I just mean, it'll take me time, I feel like, to absorb the information and really sort of see. But, the first read through was like, wow, that was great. Was it really great? I don't know. It's short enough. Let me just reread this again, So I read it again, and each sort of read through, I totally related to Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And, just this idea of a bird learning to fly and sort of the self-reflection that the bird had. It really, at that time, I was like, oh, okay. It's okay that I don't know. It's okay that I'm asking there are no stupid questions. And even then, I won't know till I ask the question and really think about it. So just ask the question, let's not be bothered with that. And I don't know that I'm a perfectionist per se, but I can relate to this idea of, my friend is going to be a doctor and has the next X years planned out. And I don't even know if I want to keep working the same job that I have currently. I might quit tomorrow. So am I less than? Am I not doing things right? How do you become an adult kind of thing? And it's just this sort of very simple story that was like, no, it's not everybody knows. And even if they do know, they know what works for them. And even if they think it works for them, is it really working? So it's okay to constantly be questioning and not have those answers. But asking the questions definitely was a big takeaway for me from that book of like, it's okay to ask the questions and not know the answers and then figure out later, well, the question should have been asked like this. It wasn't a stupid question to begin with, but it got me to the point where now maybe I'm more critically thinking about something. So such a short story, but such a big impact. And it's throughout the last year and a half. It was one of the first books I went back to read. And I don't consider myself, I don't get bored at all. Like, even if I'm lying around doing nothing, I feel like I'm choosing to lie around and do nothing. So I do remember one day, sort of unpacking my books. I had moved and I was looking at it and immediately just stopped and started reading it again in the middle of trying to put them away. And I was like, yeah, it holds up. This book is great and probably exactly what I needed in the middle of a pandemic and a move and a whole bunch of other things all happening at once, that it's still okay that I don't know a lot of stuff. I guess some honorable mentions: Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut and The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. So those are my top 3 books. Those 3 books, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Cat's Cradle, and The Alchemist, were sort of all read within the same year. Anyways, my first time. And to me, they all have a very, very generally the same kind of theme of like, you don't know, but that's okay. Keep trying. And from different perspectives, certainly. But again, sort of read them at a time when I think I needed to hear those kinds of things. And for that reason, those 3 books equally sort of have stuck with me. Generally, I would say, if we had to put a percentage to it, probably 90 to 95% of the books, especially more recently, are suggestions from friends, family, colleagues, people I'm helping, patrons of the library. It's so rare. I think reading and books it's so rare to find someone who's like, I've never read a book, or so there's such a commonality about it that it's a great conversation with old friends, with new friends, or if you're just trying to break the ice and make someone feel, comfortable. it's a good in. One book that was recommended by someone that the library actually has in its collection, I then later went and got the audiobook because I was like, yeah, I would read this again. I did the preview of the audiobook and I'm like, yes, I want that voice telling me this story 1000%. It's The Hidden Life of Trees. And we just happened to bump into each other in the library. And they were there to sort of, I think they were returning the book. They were returning the book they had taken out. And they were right at the circulation desk. And of course, I was like, whatever. And they're like, oh, I have a problem with my iPhone. And so quickly helped them with that and was like, well, what are you doing here? Saw the books. They started talking to me about it and how interesting it was and what kind of a beautiful metaphor of the communication between trees and how that's how we should be communicating and all that. And I was just like, well, I have to read this book. So even right there, I asked the volunteer at the circulation desk, like, they're returning this. Is there a waiting list for this book? If so, obviously I'll wait my turn and I'll just put my name on the list. But they're like, no. I'm like, okay. So then it like literally was checked in for a hot second. And then I took it back out and I read that book. Yeah, I think so. I think probably in similar but different ways. So like Jonathan Livingston Siegel was, again, really serendipitous. I feel like it came at a time when I was really open to that kind of story and like, I feel like almost needed to be reassured by some stranger in their words that I'm not crazy, you know? And that's, I think, one of the reasons it's in my top 3 books for sure. Maybe if I wasn't thinking or feeling the way I was and read the book, it would just be, it's a stupid book about a bird. Like, who cares? Like, you know, maybe, but so certainly I think what I'm bringing meaning to, like a personal connection and meaning to it. I recognize that and would, you know, really recognize that at the time that I think I needed that story, it also came from a very trusted source, you know, and also spurned from that kind of conversation of like, we both feel these kinds of ways and we feel like we're very different from our close group of friends, but, you know, so there was that sort of connection between the two of us and then this connection to the greater story, which then, you know, just sort of reaffirmed everything. And now we're more close. We don't feel the disconnection from everybody else, even strangers, you know? So I think especially for that book, that one was contextually and temporally, you know, at the perfect time for me to read that book, for sure. The one from the library, The Hidden Life of Trees. I don't think the connection is sort of that personal and deep, although it did change my life because I 100% think about trees extremely differently now. It gave me even a real understanding of how they're surviving and working out their social stratus, if you will. I've been really lucky to live near parks a lot. And one of my last apartments, there's a few trees in the park. And there was one right on the corner that every year I was like, it's dead. It's not going to do it this year. Its leaves did not come out until like early or late July or something. And so it's not until after reading the book, but then it would come out, leaves healthy, full bloom. You're like, why did it take you so long? You know, then you realize it's because that huge tree, the moment its leaves come out, it's going to shade an extreme portion of the park. So it withholds coming out. So the baby trees and the grass and everything in its immediate surroundings and community can get the sun and the water and the stuff it needs to grow. I can cry right now. Like that kind of intention for something we will just hack down and make paper out of is, it's kind of amazing, you know? So learning about those kinds of things and like seeing, oh my gosh, there's a rhyme and a reason to this huge tree not blooming right away. And just, so it's even that, certainly about trees, but also about, well, what does that mean for me as a person? Am I playing the right role as a bigger person? Like I have a young niece or other people in my life? Am I making sure that they get the water and the sunlight they need to thrive? And, by doing that, it doesn't take away from me I'll bloom when I can and when it's right. And it'll be just as spectacular as if I hadn't waited, except there's such a beautiful thing for me not stealing that sunlight from other people, and letting them thrive.